Hello, this is David Lee. Welcome back to the series, How to Control a House for a $1 Deposit with No Mortgage Needed. Now, this chapter I'm going to be talking about how vendor finance works. This is the key to what we're doing. Vendor finance, what is it? It's also vendor terms or terms sales. It is quite often a direct negotiation between buyer and seller. The vendor being the seller and you, the investor, buyer, whatever your role is in the transaction, but you're negotiating directly with the vendor. Now, in the United Kingdom, I avoided using the term vendor finance because remember how I said about conventions and people's stereotypical way of thinking? If in the United Kingdom I use the word finance, that immediately triggered the thinking of credit. Credit meaning you needed a credit license to do this, because the difference was between Australia was that when you were selling somebody a property on vendor finance, that was deemed to be a loan agreement. And so I thought I can't use the word vendor finance. And also, again, remember our way of thinking, how we get conditioned. Well, I remember in the 1960s where my mother would go to the department stores and buy articles quite often at a high price. She didn't have the money. They only had in those days a department store card or paid cash. That was all. So she would go back after making a deposit. The store held on to the product. She would make monthly payments until she paid it in full. And so that was the way, after the last payment, the last installment was made, she could go home with the product. Now, in that arrangement and that conventional way of thinking, was there any credit? She put a deposit down, she went back with more money, installment payment in one direction. There was no money borrowed that you were paying back. That's two directions. But if it's all going in one direction, is there any credit agreement? No, there's not. And when I explained that to the solicitors and they got a counsel opinion, there's no credit arrangement under that. Because that was the way I thought, coming from my immigrant thinking. But you try to explain that to anybody in the United Kingdom, they could not get their head around it. So that was one of the big differences. So understand that as a key ingredient to what differs and how we did it in one location compared to somewhere else. Now, when you're speaking to a seller, for example, you want to uncover what's going on in the transaction. It's just not the property. Yes, I want all cash for the property today. You want to find out, one of the key things is how much debt is outstanding on the property, because that will vary what you're going to come up with a solution. Now imagine that you've got, what can I use? I'm going to use £100,000, $100,000, okay, and they've got, I'll use 20,000 debt on the property, they've got 80,000 credit. How you deal with that person, what you're going to say, and finding out the reason for them selling is going to be different for somebody that's just got a little bit of equity, which we call the cash bit in the property. They just want to get their little bit of cash. They don't care about the debt bit. Nobody cares about the debt bit, what's owing to the bank. They only want what's in it for them. So how you approach that type of transaction is going to be different, as will be if the sale price is $100,000, their debt is $100,000. What are they going to walk away with? Nothing. So that's where you can buy a house on a $1 deposit, £1, £1, €1, with no mortgage needed. And again, what will differ? What if they've got 120,000 debt, 150,000 debt? I'm just going up on a 100,000 house. What are they going to do to complete the sale? They've either got to write out a check that if they may not have the cash for to pay off the difference, and lowering the price according to the real estate agent, that's not going to help. So if you understand what their predicament is, you can start fitting a solution that fits like a glove to their problem. But if you don't know that, you don't know what you're up against. Therefore, you can make money in any of those scenarios, but you've just got to have that information. That's why communication is very important. Now, I'll give you a blatant difference between what not to say and what you could say. Excuse me, Mr. Seller, would you mind if I buy your house for $1? What's the reaction going to be? What do you think? It's not going to happen. Mr. Seller, what about if I come up with this? What if I could, I'm not saying I can, what if I could take your property for what's owing on the mortgage? Is that something that might work for you? Do you think I might get a more positive reaction by framing the question that way? And he's thinking, I'm getting nothing out of this. What's owing on the mortgage? I've just really bought that house on a $1 deposit. It's just the paperwork that's got to be put in place. Are you understanding the differences, the psychology of what you're going to be saying, why that's important, understanding how to frame the deal, the transaction, so that that person, no matter what the situation is, you want them to do better than they otherwise could. And if you know what the reason is for the sale, what's their motivation, you're going to drop in hints and clues that answers those problems they're looking to solve. In the book, in this chapter, you're going to get the history of vendor finance in Australia. So you can hear it from a solicitor on how it's been around for a long time, so there's nothing new. And he will explain that it is more important, the structure of the deal, so that it works for both parties, more than the paperwork. People, and I've seen it, people want to know, I want a lease option deal. Has somebody got a lease option deal? It doesn't work that way. You've got to know what's the problem, what's the solution, how to craft it and structure the transaction. It's not just a lease option deal or whatever they're calling it. And everybody loves, I've told you before, they want to know what's the standard. What's the standard? I'm going to show you the standard. If you're negotiating with a seller, for example, what's the standard? I'm going to give you the paperwork. Get ready. It's coming your way now. Take a look. That's the standard formula for coming up with a creative solution with the vendor. Now, what can I write on that standard document? I can write absolutely anything at all, because we're going to write a solution particular to the person in front of you that's looking to sell and you looking to buy or whatever you're trying to do, and you're going to come up with what works for both of you. You can sign it at the bottom. And if you've got a highly intelligent solicitor, pair of solicitors, well, they're more intelligent than us, Mr. Seller, and me. I just buy houses this way and try to help people I can. Do you mind if we just pass what we've just written down so they can put it down in their legal talk? Would that be all right with you? Because I don't know anything about legalese, but if they can understand our 12-year-old language, our scribble, well, I'm sure we can put something together. Are you getting a bit of an idea now that this is really a people business, a communication of working with people rather than trying to compete? Because they're going to think, when they pick up the phone with you the first time, are you just like everybody else? You're going to offer 20%, 25% below market value for a quick sale. That is their conditioning. So you've got to be able to break that cycle. Happy reading. We'll catch you in the next chapter. This is David Lee. I'll speak to you very soon.